Okay, let's test it out.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to episode 44.
44.
This is why I have to write it down every time.
Eat, drink, right. Wait.
Yes. An urban fantasy whiteboard.
Yeah, that.
Okay. All right. I still can't tell. I feel like we're in shadow. Your face isn't in shadow. Why is my face in shadow?
Well, it's probably because you can't see through your glasses.
Fair point. Okay. All right. Shall we try this again?
Let's do this again.
Welcome to episode 44 of Eat, Drink, Write, and Urban Fantasy Whiteboard. See, I have it written down. Today, we are going to talk about writing dystopian novels, which we write urban fantasy, but dystopian novels can be urban fantasy.
Yeah, I think they could fall under that umbrella.
Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they're sci-fi entirely based on a technological thing.
Right.
But anyway, so that's what we're going to be talking about. How was your week?
It was pretty good. I'm still exhausted all the time. I'm tired of grad school, and it's one of those weeks where I'm like, I could just quit and not do it. So, but otherwise, like, not bad. I got to come home for Halloween, which is why I'm here in person, which was really, really nice because I haven't seen you guys since July.
Yeah.
And so it was really nice to get to hang out and watch football and drink, and I drank a lot. I'm a little hungover, so
we played drinking games, watching horror movies. It was great. I'm sure our neighbors really appreciated us because every time, like during football, we did drinking games during football too. And when every time a touchdown happened, we'd scream at the top of our lungs, "Touchdown!
Yep.
Drink!"
Yep. I'm sure they thought we were having a party, and there were like 4 of us.
I know. Is that all that happened this week? Did you accomplish any writing goals?
I have a new writing idea, so I came up with a new book idea, which is, honestly, I don't need it right now. Like, I've got so many things that I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But no, otherwise, like, I'm letting Louie and Delaney sit so that I can go back through it one more time before I send it off to you to read and my girlfriend to read and all that for some feedback and stuff. And then I should really get, like, other beta readers, but someday.
I don't know. You've got a good bunch of beta readers now, I think.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, you got me who's got writing, understanding of writing,
right,
which is a great beta reader to have, like your mind for that.
Yeah.
And then you've got your girlfriend who can read for the content and the story, and so that's a pretty good combination there.
Yeah. So yeah, but that was about it.
Yeah, my week. The main thing was Halloween, which was so exciting. So I planned a big Halloween party for the whole 4 of us. We actually had you and your girlfriend and Jordan and her husband, and then the youngest, Riley, had her friend Taylor come over, and I had a whole spread of food. I made monster mash, which was chili, and bat wings, which was chicken wings, and guacamole, which was guacamole. We had deviled eggs, all kinds of fun stuff. So that was fun. That was the highlight of my week.
Really good.
I did start spending time organizing because I was so overwhelmed last month.
Right.
I'm like, I got to get a handle on this. So I've actually bought a program, a calendar program, and I'm starting to use it to try to organize the tasks that need to get done.
Yep.
So that was helpful. Not real exciting, but helpful. I have no writing goals. I wanted to do some Halloween paragraph writing.
Yeah.
And it just never happened.
Never had the chance.
Yeah. So what are you eating and drinking?
Well, we don't have food.
Yeah, no food.
But I am drinking tea because she asked me if I wanted to drink alcohol, and I think I had enough yesterday to cover me for a little bit. So I'm drinking my usual English breakfast tea.
Okay.
And it's really nice.
Nice. I am drinking keto hot chocolate, which is the first hot chocolate that I've had since going on keto, and it seems so sweet, even though it's sugar that's not real sugar. It just is like super sweet. I think I could inject this stuff into my veins and be quite happy.
Wow.
So that's what we're drinking. I could drink, but hot chocolate sounded really good.
Yeah.
I have some jokes that are really, really bad.
Oh, hit me with them.
I couldn't really find any good dystopian jokes. There were some, but they were a little bit more risque than I wanted to say out loud. So
interesting.
I tried to find jokes on death because I thought, dystopian death. And plus today we're recording on the Day of the Dead.
Oh, yeah.
So,
nice. All right.
Yeah. All right. So coronavirus has been copying the Black Death. It's plagiarism.
Oh God. Wow.
Okay, and then here's a going to heaven type joke. So hundreds of years after their deaths, Galileo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Marco Polo are walking in heaven and decide to have a conversation with Jesus.
Okay.
Galileo says, Jesus, I've been thinking about my past life on Earth and wanted to know what I am remembered for after all these years. Jesus pauses and replies, Galileo, you were remembered as the father of modern physics. By being one of the first to apply mathematics to motion, you led the way to the creation of modern science. Galileo smiled with joy and walked away. Leonardo, intrigued by Galileo's question, says, well, Jesus, please tell me what I am remembered for all these years later. Jesus pauses and replies, Leonardo, you are remembered as one of the best painters, sculptors, architects, scientists, and anatomists in all of history. Your paintings of the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper are still considered to be one of the most miraculous works of art of all time. Leonardo smiled with joy and walked away. Marco, now eager to ask the same question, says, Jesus, please tell me what I am remembered for on Earth all these years later. Jesus pauses for a significant amount of time and starts sweating profusely. After a few minutes of silence and a pool of sweat forming at his feet, Jesus replies, okay, so a bunch of kids get into a pool.
That's a good one.
I thought that was kind of funny. So dystopian novels.
Yeah.
So what exactly is a dystopian novel? And what made me think to write this is that your dad hadn't really heard that term as applied to writing or even movies. He never just used that term, even though we've watched and read plenty of dystopian stuff. He never connected the two.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he turned on a show and he's like, I found a dystopian show, and I'm watching it and I'm like, no, this is not dystopian. It was The Other Lamb. I don't know if you've watched that.
No, I haven't seen that one.
I'm like, no.
It's not a dystopian.
No. Anyway, so I was like, let's do an episode on dystopian novels.
Yeah.
So dystopia comes from Latin, which I took 4 years of Latin in high school and also in college.
Mm-hmm.
And the prefix dys means bad, and the root topos means place. So it's literally bad place is what dystopian stands for.
Yeah.
It's, according to the Oxford Dictionary online, dystopia is an imagined state or society in which there is great suffering or injustice, typically one that is totalitarian.
Oh my goodness.
I am not drinking, even though this shirt says may contain wine, I am not drinking anything alcoholic.
Struggling.
And I have here in my face, post-apocalyptic. So it's also considered an antonym of utopia, which was a term that was coined by Sir Thomas More in his book, which I think was called Utopia, from 1516. And that created the ideal blueprint of a perfect society.
Right.
And so that's where the term utopia came from. And then dystopia is used as the opposite of that.
Gotcha.
They're often characterized by dehumanization, tyrannical governments, environmental disaster, or other characteristics associated with a cataclysmic decline in society.
Yeah.
Cataclysm has happened, and it's post that.
Right.
Normally.
Right.
In its literary form, it's a form of speculative fiction.
You just can't talk today.
Goodness, maybe I should be drinking. That began as a response to that utopian literature. And honestly, dystopian is so much more interesting than utopian.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
A dystopian society is often comes about through the abuse or misuse of power.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which is something that you hear about all the time when looking into dystopian. Like as I was doing research today, I knew, just going through each website, it was all about the misuse of power, or where is the power playing in this society and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I found while I was looking at all this was that it's also about the control of people through corrupt propaganda, which I thought was super interesting.
Oh gosh, sound familiar? in today's world.
Oh yeah, no,
The
absolutely.
control of people through
Yeah, which is it's a direct
media.
parallel to, obviously our election here in the States is coming up. Actually, I guess it would be, our episode is airing on Tuesday.
Oh, on election
So
day.
on election
Yeah.
day. And so yeah, it was just super interesting to see that corrupt propaganda was another characteristic of dystopian societies. And it's like, if you think about the Hunger Games, they use the relationship between Peeta and Katniss as a way to get them more money and supplies, and it's purely propaganda.
Yeah.
Look at this couple. Look at them.
Mm-hmm.
And they blast it on TV. Everybody in the country is watching
Mm-hmm.
these Hunger Games and these kids, and they are using them as a way to gain money
and power and control.
Right. And then another thing I saw was that dystopian society is often presented as a utopian society within the story. So like, it is dystopian, and outside of the story, we as the reader know that it's dystopian. But within the story, the government is like, no, the world is perfect. Everything is as it should be.
Again, the parallel, make America great. Again.
Right. So just
wow.
Super interesting. Those were 2 points that I found that I really wanted to touch on, because I think they bring up really interesting parallels.
Is fascinating.
Yeah.
So why is it so popular? Well, part of it is, like what you just said, it's going on in today's world, that we can almost see this future dystopia coming based on what's happening now, which is so frightening.
It is.
But it is a way that you can use as a writer. You can educate and warn humanity about the dangers of current social and political things that are going on. So this might be the perfect climate to write a dystopian, take what we see and are starting to fear and exaggerate it down the road, and what would that society look like? And it is frightening. So I can see dystopian books being popular in the next foreseeable future. They can also be satirical critiques, which is fun. That's a fun thing. And as a writer, writing satire is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Today's society, like I said, is kind of the perfect storm for writing dystopian novels.
At least in the U.S.
I know, but I think other countries have their own issues. There's still racism and things in other countries as well. It's just very rampant. It's out in the open here in America. I think the whole world looks at America as a totally dysfunctional, maybe dystopian already.
A little bit.
Yeah. The dystopian novels often use the stresses of society to speculate and exaggerate what might happen. So that was what I was talking about. Look at what we fear today and exaggerate it, and down the road and see what could it be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you were talking about our world, like our issues that we're having today in today's world. And I think that plays a huge role into why it's so popular too, dystopian novels in general. Because it's intriguing to think about how our society can turn into something like that. Because you're like, look at our problems that we have and exaggerate it down the road. And that is just an intriguing thing to think about.
Yeah.
It allows the reader to think of situations that could be considered realistic, but in a fictional setting.
Yeah.
So it makes everyone think about, like, oh, well, it'd be interesting if that did happen. Like, how did we get to this point, kind of thing.
Yes. I mean, and looking at what we have now, I can see how they might have gotten to that point in this particular, right now we've got all the pandemic movies that are out there that are just, because the whole world has this pandemic. And so people are afraid. And I have to admit, some of the new pandemic movies that came out, I watched them, just because this is what we're going through today. And it's scary and intriguing to think about, what would happen.
Right. No, exactly. Because back towards the beginning of quarantine, I immediately went, and I don't think it's necessarily dystopian, but I immediately went and watched that movie Contagion.
I did too.
Which has Kate Winslow in it.
Yeah.
And all that. So that was one of the first things I did when quarantine hit. I was like, might as well go and watch this movie about a pandemic where it eradicated a lot of the population. And that is just intriguing to me. And that's why, is because it was so realistic. It was happening now.
Yeah.
And I think that plays a lot into why dystopian novels are so popular.
I think so too. Let's see. Also, dystopian novels by nature are full of tension and conflict,
right?
Which we love as readers.
And we love drama.
Yeah, drama. That's why we read the books, any kind of book,
right?
Murder mysteries or romances. There's always that conflict and drama that we love. And dystopian is about as conflicted as you can get.
100%. You get a ton of drama with that too. So, yeah.
So, what are some characteristics of a dystopian novel? Number one, like we've talked about, government control. And Hunger Games is pretty much the first one that came to mind for me.
Yeah.
But also 1984.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I mean, I hope we don't upset listeners, but when Trump got elected in 2016, I was all about, oh my God, it's 1984 happening all over again, to the point that my husband was like, stop with the 1984. And I'm like,
but actually, yeah, no, I think that falls under, there's a loss of rights, and there's a total control of people by the government, and there's a lack of choice and free will by the people, which is a very dystopian idea to me.
It is, and like you were talking about, in 1984, the media was used to control the people as to what they learn, and the main character in 1984, his job was to rewrite history to match whatever the current government agenda was.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy. You can also have environmental catastrophe.
Yeah.
Like Maze Runner. I think it was also a disease, though, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
I think it was either a disease or environmental, or maybe both. But I love that movie, the books and the movies of that one.
Yeah, I haven't read the books, but I have seen the movies. But yeah, that's a good example of that one. And these are interesting to think about because of, again, issues that we have today with climate change. Think about all the hurricanes we've had this season, and the wildfires in California and Australia, and all of that. Like the climate is obviously impacting humanity on a very large scale, and so that's interesting to take that and exaggerate it and make that into a more dystopian.
One of your dad's favorite movies is The Day After Tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Which could be seen as the beginning of a dystopian society, depending on what happens, how many people have died and how the world is going to have to reshape itself after this natural disaster, this category, whatever, hurricanes over land and whatnot. So, yeah, fascinating. Then there can be technological catastrophes or medical catastrophes. Like one of my favorite movies is I Am Legend.
Oh, that's a great one.
It is so good.
It is a good one. And terrifying. Not necessarily because I think that could happen, just from my side of knowing science. And that kind of thing. But also it could. Because if you, think about the zombie fungus that makes ants climb to the tops of like, imagine something like that affecting humans, or rabies, even just something as simple as rabies. So like a modified rabies disease could potentially do something like that.
Another thing that's fascinating about that one to me, given today's pandemic, is that it was started in the movie based on a cure.
Oh, yeah.
It was a cure that caused it. And so,
because it cured cancer, but then it turned them into vampires.
Yeah. So everybody is cured, but now we live in this dystopian society where everybody is dead. And, I'm thinking about they're rushing through to try to get the, vaccine?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you try it first.
Right, absolutely.
I don't want to turn into a vampire. That could scientifically
No,
happen,
right, but
it is
the basis of a dystopian novel.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's in reality right now. It's happening now.
I actually was thinking about it because, like, you think about how things were at the beginning of quarantine. I remember when it first started and we went into lockdown, it felt super post-apocalyptic. Just being out on the road, because I had to go into work still, so I couldn't just stay in lockdown. And so I'd be out on the road and it'd be empty. And then there would be signs like the traffic signs that are like, drive slow, don't drive, like those signs. There were ones where it was like, stop the spread, wash your hands, don't do that. And it was like, oh God, there's like a disease across the entire globe right now. And it's like very obvious in the way that I'm living my life. I'm seeing these signs of it.
It is. It's scary.
Yeah. So it was almost like a zombie apocalypse almost, because there was no one out. And if you saw someone out and they didn't have a mask on, you're like, oh God, like,
Well, I guess, I hadn't thought of it until you just said that, but Walking Dead was a disease that caused it, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a virus.
Yeah, because the CDC episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, like a virus or
some
something.
kind of virus.
It's been years since I watched the first season. So, but yeah.
So yeah, fascinating. And I love Walking Dead. That's one of my favorite series.
Yeah.
It can also be post all of that and you're in survival mode.
Yeah.
So like Mad Max.
Yeah.
City of Ember was a good one.
Yeah.
I loved that book. I think they might have made a movie, but I haven't seen it.
I don't think I've read that one, and I haven't seen the movie.
You didn't have to read it in school?
No, not for any of my classes.
It's a really good one where some kind of environmental catastrophe happens and humanity goes underground.
Yeah.
And so they've lived underground, and they were supposed to stay there until, I don't know if it was a nuclear issue, until the air was clear. And so you see in this book how that society is surviving underground or trying to survive. It's all about survival. And you have to read it.
Yeah, I will have to read it. Also, I think there was a movie. I think you're right, because I think I remember seeing commercials for it. So
maybe I'd be curious to see the movie.
Yeah.
Although the book was so good, I'm always afraid to watch a movie after reading a really good book.
Yeah.
Snowpiercer.
Yeah, the one with the train. Yeah.
And they've just made a series with it, which I started watching the series. I found it fascinating. I don't think your dad liked it. It was a little too, there was no hope there. It was a hopeless.
Well, it was so interesting because at the end of the movie, there's a polar bear outside that they show, but the whole point of the movie was that there was no life outside at all.
Which goes along with City of Ember, where they believe that they're safe only where they are, but in reality, things have changed outside.
Right.
But yeah, in Snowpiercer, that leads them to their freedom.
Yeah.
So to speak. That's the whole point of that dystopian issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. One of the ones that I thought of was A Quiet Place, where the monsters, the aliens, I guess, came in.
That is so good.
Right.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
It's a great one, and because they're just there to survive, and they figured out, oh, you can't make any sound. If you make sound, then you're gonna die. And the opening scene was perfect, which I know you talked about in a little bit, so maybe we can bring that back up then. But just like I thought that was a great example, just because they are fighting to survive, and they have to do all these things in order to survive, and the mom is pregnant, so they have to devise a way that she can give birth without
making
getting
a noise.
Right.
Yeah. Which is impossible, y'all, unless you're knocked out cold as a cucumber. I'm just saying.
Right.
That's a good one. I hadn't thought of that one. I love movies and books and everything. Another characteristic of a dystopian novel would be the loss of individualism. Handmaid's Tale is the number one.
Right, because they're all in the same outfits. They all wear the same things, and all they're there for is reproduction.
I mean, that's another something that is similar to what's going on right now with the taking away of women's rights and the control of our own bodies and that kind of thing. Handmaid's Tale is not that far-fetched.
Right.
Which makes it just horrifying to watch.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, and then they address issues like, LGBTQ stuff, like the things that happen to the characters that are LGBTQ.
Yeah.
So when I was watching it, I was like, well, awesome. I love relating to this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and those are things happening today, and I could see some wacko faction trying to take over the government of the United States.
Right. Right.
It's very, very frightening to think, especially as much of turmoil as there is in a lot of countries right now, not just the United States.
Right.
I know that we're a mess right now.
We are a mess
but
right now.
Other countries also are divided on issues of women's rights. Where was that huge protest just recently? I mean, massive protest because they've done a total ban on abortion.
Yeah.
And the women took to the streets, and I can't remember where it was.
Me neither.
The pictures were amazing. So, yeah. Logans Run, that's before your time. It was a 1970s movie.
I was going to say, I don't recognize the title.
And I loved that movie. It's a futuristic society where they're controlled. They have these implants put in their hands, and it goes from color to color as you grow. And when it turns black, it's time for you to die. But they don't think of it as death. They don't know it's death. It's like they're this innocent culture because they're being controlled, not necessarily by a government, but by a computer that is like their government.
Right.
And so they all walk into these things and they get obliterated and everybody cheers. What was it?
It was a little helicopter leaf, but it missed my gut, so it's fine.
And so they walk to their deaths and everybody cheers and they all think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
because they have no idea they're being killed. And that story is the story of how they break out of that. It was an excellent.
I feel like there's another story that's that way where they. Oh, it was in the 100. I was watching the 100 recently, which is another dystopian.
Yeah, it is. I hadn't thought of that.
Society. Yeah. But there's one season where they have this ability to download their consciousness into this chip, and then they can implant the chip in someone new.
Oh yeah.
But it kills that person. But they don't realize that it's killing them. They think that they're being ascended, and so they're like, "Oh, I'm becoming a god," and instead, they're really getting killed so that this person can live on.
Vaguely remember that.
Yeah,
it's been a while since I've watched that.
Yeah.
The Giver, which Jordan had to read in school, so it's a fairly recent read for me.
Yeah.
Fahrenheit 451, which the burning of books.
Right.
Right. You know, the burning of knowledge. Honestly, the burning of individuality and creativity and the right to be an individual.
Yeah. And then I had an example of Gattaca, that movie Gattaca with Ethan Hawke.
I know, I saw it, but I don't remember. What was that one?
I watched it in high school, but it stuck with me because there was this guy and he was an invalid.
Was imperfect.
Yeah, he was like an invalid, and you had to be valid in order to live and do your job or whatever. And the way that he got around that was he played the system. He like got blood from someone else or used a way so that he wouldn't be killed or taken out or whatever. I don't remember. It's been so long. I do
remember that. That was a good one.
Yeah. And it was just super interesting because, he was considered invalid because of, whatever genetic defect he had or something.
Yeah.
And he was trying to escape and get out.
But that only, he was lucky enough to have been smart or rich or whatever enough to be able to work around.
Right.
Think of all the people that
didn't. Right. Right. So that was an interesting.
Wow.
And that was, I put this under loss of individualism because, he's treated as not a human. He was just treated as
he has to be
an invalid
perfect
person.
like everybody else.
Right.
In order to be allowed in society.
Right. So.
Wow. So how do you write one of these? So you start off with a strong scenario to set that scene as the quote bad place, the dystopia.
Right. So like an action that'll stick in your reader's mind as this place is not good.
This sucks.
This is a bad thing. And that's what I was thinking of when I was talking about A Quiet Place. The opening scene is their kid dies because they had a toy that they turned on the sound to, and the sound attracted the monster, and so the kid got killed. And immediately, like, that's your introduction to the movie, and so you're like, oh no, this is a bad place.
Definitely.
Right.
Is there a movie called The Bad Place?
There's a show called The Good Place.
Yeah, I know the show. I feel like there's something in The Bad Place. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
But, if you have it in the title, that's probably
a bad
so
place,
good.
right?
Yeah. You've got to present a sense of threat, menace, or discomfort. You describe these settings so that we, the reader, can clearly see what makes them so uncomfortable.
Right. So, like, insert a lack of empathy from the government or the harsh reality of surviving after an environmental catastrophe. Do your characters have to resort to eating rotten food in order to not starve?
Well, Snowpiercer.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Do they risk their lives just to get water? And you have to do that every day. Are there severe punishments for small offenses? Which I know in the Hunger Games, Gale got whipped that one time for doing whatever. So, are the punishments very skewed in terms of, the offense? So just think about things like that.
That's a good point. You've got to know how your world gets to this. You can't just start by going, oh, my world's going to be this and this. You've got to know how it got there.
Right.
It's up to you whether you as the author reveal how much you reveal as to how it got there, or how you want to reveal that. Do you want to do it through flashbacks? Do you want to do it through memories? Do you want to do it through ceremonies that they have nowadays? But you decide, but you've got to know in your head how it got there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important that you know those details. And I think it should be applied in pretty much every aspect of your story. Because as a dystopian novel, like, it's going to be affecting the way that a character does get water, or it's going to be affecting whatever. Can they go to this area of the world, or was that place bombed by a nuclear bomb? Like, that kind of stuff. So you need to know how it got there. So was there a nuclear attack?
Yeah.
And that's a reason that they can't go over here. So
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
That's true.
So whether you reveal that there was a nuclear attack, it still needs to be in the sort. Oh, we don't go over there because of blah. Like it'll make you sick or something.
Yeah, yeah. It might have evolved to the point where they don't remember, but they just know you don't go there. It's dangerous. It's a bad place.
It's a bad place.
The devil is in the details in writing a dystopian novel.
Right.
You've got to think down to those details, like you were talking about. What do they eat? How do they eat?
Yeah.
How do they get their water? What do they wear? You can't just go to Target and buy your clothes.
Right.
How might this altered social, natural, or political environment change ordinary things that we take for granted?
Right.
How we go and turn on the faucet to get a drink of water. But if it's a day trip to go and hike and you've got to figure out how to carry it back and and then water becomes, you're not going to be able to step in the shower and just take a shower because you got sweaty in the garden today.
Right.
I
tell you what, I'd cut off all my hair. All my hair would be gone.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Yeah. On that note, that is world building, which we did a whole episode.
Yes.
Two. I think we've done 2 episodes on world building. So in a dystopian novel, there is a whole lot of world building that you got to do.
Right.
So questions to ask. I always like to do this.
I think it's a good way to kind of start thinking about things.
Yeah. I think it helps our listeners. It helps me when I'm writing, So who has the power now? And why do they have the power? How did they get the power? Like in The Handmaid's Tale, the people that have the power are the people that overthrew the government and took it over.
Right.
So that's how they had it. The why is because they were able to plan and plot and do it.
Yeah.
And they took immediate control.
Right.
Who are the most vulnerable in this dystopian society and why? In Handmaid's Tale, it's the 4 girls that get raped every month or however often they have to be subjected to that.
Right.
And why. And the why in that society, and part of why they were able to take over was because fertility rates were going down, were on the decline, which they are in today's world as well because of environmental issues, all kinds of things. And the author exaggerated that so that it was to the point where people were afraid that we were going to become extinct because the fertility rates were going down.
Right.
And so they wanted these women that they knew were fertile to
be able
bear
to have
babies.
Kids.
And what still works and what no longer exists? What do people remember and what have they forgotten? That's what we were talking about. They might not remember that it was a nuclear
attack or whatever. But they know that they get sick when they go towards that area because of radiation, whether they know that or not.
Think about how names might change, cultural practices might change, holidays.
Yeah,
those are going to change.
Right. And there'll be new holidays, or there will be holidays that just don't exist anymore.
I still remember that Star Trek, the original series. I think I've talked about it before on the podcast. That original series, the one where Kirk ends up on a planet, and it took him the whole episode to figure out that they had a constitution, and the language had changed so much that what they were saying was "we the people." Of the United States of America, but their accents had changed, and so it took him all the way through until the very end of the episode, and that's what saved him, as he finally realized, oh my God, they're putting the Constitution, and he was able to. And they're like, oh, he's not bad. He knows our stuff.
Interesting.
So
interesting.
Star Trek had a whole bunch of. It taught all kinds of things. I love that show.
That's awesome. Another question that I was thinking about was, how has society continued? How were they able to continue after whatever it was that happened? Did it continue? And where does the trust lie? And that's kind of what the, one of your questions was, where is the power? I think trust is a big one because you can have your main character, and it's who do they trust? Do they trust their friend, and why? Where do they find trust? Like, can they learn to trust someone else? Do they trust the government? Do they trust that kind of thing?
Well, think about Walking Dead in the very first season. His partner in the sheriff's department wanted his wife.
Right.
And so here he thought he could trust him. And that guy, Shane,
Shane, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at one scene they were running and he shot the guy. You know, there's a joke about doing that, and he did it.
And he did it, yeah. Yeah, Shane was a character.
So
interesting guy.
Can you really trust your friends?
Right.
In a society where it's survival based.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is funny because my next note was actually think about how The Walking Dead did things.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but that was a different type of example because I have here, you know, they had the little clusters of cities and civilization, but no one really trusted each other, and so sure enough, things would go haywire. Our characters would waltz into this city and be like, "Oh, this seems great. You've got food and you've got water and you've got electricity," and then eventually it all comes crumbling down because there's no trust anywhere
and no over government, no central organized anything.
Right. So those are just interesting things to think about. Are there cities and how do they run? Is there trust within those cities, and if you know, how do they deal with outsiders, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we'll do another episode. There's so much to talk about on dystopia, but we can talk about dystopian characters, like what being in the Walking Dead society did to Shane.
Right.
Because he was a police officer.
Yeah, right.
You know, a paragon of good. He's supposed to be helping the people and keeping the people safe. And wow, when things changed, he changed with them, which I think you might have to do to survive, but that's an interesting concept to explore.
Yeah. Right.
So I would like to do an episode on characters in dystopian societies and what their arcs might be and what their motivations might be and that kind of thing.
Right.
So why do we want to read about such horrible things?
Yeah.
In a word, hope.
Yeah.
You know, in The Quiet Place, yes, it starts off with their child being killed. And that's horrible, but you watch this family struggle and you have hope that they're somehow going to overcome it. They're going to get through it.
Right.
In A Handmaid's Tale, you hope that somehow they're going to take the government back.
Yeah.
That somehow they're going to rescue the children that have been taken, and you know,
Right.
So there's hope. Like in the Divergent series. Oh, we didn't mention that one. The Divergent series. Yeah. The world is what it is, but we feel hope that it might be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the Hunger Games, we see their struggle. In the beginning, we see their struggle just to survive. She's out hunting. She's eating food that's thrown away. But you see them struggle to go from just survival to overcoming the actual dystopia of their society and making it better.
Right.
It gives us hope. And it's also a warning. It's a warning to us in our current times to be aware of what we have now.
Right.
And what we could be. Like this climate crisis is just terrible.
Right.
And we've got to do something to keep the climate from, you know, I mean, the world will survive. It's just that humans on the world might not survive.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, it's not going to hurt the planet. It'll recover. It recovers very quickly. When you mow the lawn, it grows back. You know, but if we want humanity to be able to live on the earth, we need to do something about it.
Right.
So it warns us. It helps spread that story to a whole bunch of people to get them thinking about it, because it takes the people should be the ones with the power, and it takes the people to get things done and to make change that needs to be done.
Right.
One of the reasons The Handmaid's Tale is so popular is that it is so realistic in what we're going towards today.
Right. Right.
It's very scary. It's about all I've got.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I liked that you brought up the notion of hope, because I think that is pretty big in terms of why everybody likes to read in general. Is because you want to feel things, and I think you're right. I think with dystopian novels, it's like you hope to see them make the world better, because it starts off in this bad place, this bad setting, and you want to see it get to a good setting. So it allows us.
Then there's things like The Road. I never read the book, but I watched the movie and it was awful.
I know that I haven't seen it because y'all were like, look, don't watch it.
I mean, it's survival, and he died.
Yeah.
I mean, we had hope all the way through.
Right.
I mean, and there's still hope in the end because the sun is there. But anyway.
Right. Yeah, but I think it allows us to see, you know, that we can also overcome harsh realities. You know, we watch these characters struggle and fight to make a better world, and you can do that too. Either by going out to vote as our election day is today, or by just changing little things or giving to charities or just helping people in general. Like you too can make a difference somewhere in the world, and I think that watching characters in dystopian novels do the same thing, albeit on a different scale for their world.
Well, and watching people like Shane, shoot someone else so he can survive, it puts us in that mindset. Oh my God, would I do that?
Yeah.
And I hope I wouldn't do that. And how can I make sure that I don't do that?
Right.
And then there's going to be people listening to this that would go, heck yeah, I'd do that. It's the apocalypse. I want to survive.
Right. Well, but and I guess you really don't know if you would or not until you're in that situation. You don't. So yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, good topic.
It is a good topic. I do have an interview question.
Okay.
Do any of your novels have dystopian qualities? Any of those characteristics? Because not necessarily a dystopian novel, but do they have any of the qualities of them?
I don't think so. I mean, Frickin' Fairies is all a menagerie, so the world is the world. There is the world itself is not dystopian. There's no dystopian anything. Although within the Fae community, there are issues that could lead to dystopian in the future.
Right.
They're on the
absolutely
of something.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that book that we were going to write together that we started mapping out together.
The Witch Wall. Yeah.
I think that could very well be from a dystopian. It could be dystopian in that I think there was some horrific catastrophe that led them to separating the two magics.
Right.
There was something bad that happened that made the wall that, so I think that might have dystopian characteristics. And then I've started one, I haven't written on it it's been a long time. It's called The Hybrid Wars, and it started with a dream.
Oh.
It was a dream I had. And it was a society where tech versus magic, which makes me think of
Kate
Daniels' series. Yeah. That's definitely dystopian, although
to some degree they've recreated their society.
They have, and they work.
I feel like it's post-dystopian.
Post-dystopian.
Which is so interesting to think about, but yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, in my book, tech versus magic and magic won.
Nice.
And so it's got that government control over the people, and the people that are looked down on are the non-magical people, and you're not allowed to mate with
non-magic,
and my main character is a hybrid, and so it's the Hybrid Wars, and so but yeah, it will have been set in this world, so it's urban fantasy to a degree, but it's post this magic catastrophe.
Right.
Like just kind of like Kate Daniels, where tech is controlling right now. We don't even know magic in our world.
Right.
But it could be there, and it could have been so stamped out since the Celtic times when they believed in magic and practiced the magic.
Right.
Think about what if magic was there, but now that no one does it, there's no control over it.
Right.
And so it takes over. But I don't think any of my other ones do.
Yeah.
Because my Kata book, where she starts here, she goes to that's more fantasy.
Yeah, right.
And then my twins is a epic fantasy. So I don't think I've got. What about you?
The only one that I could think of would be Aiden, which you haven't read the newer version of it. But essentially, and I can now draw parallels to our current world now, because magic essentially was a pandemic. And so it rushes through and it can change people. So it infects people and changes them according to, what they were doing at the time or what their personality was like. And so but this is also more post-dystopian. So like this magic's already come through and changed people, and it's still doing that, but they've like come around and made a way to live with it and, figure it out and like that kind of stuff. And so there are like universities that are dedicated to studying it, and like, how much time does it take for magic to change a person or infect a person or whatever. And so I think that's probably the one that's closest to having dystopian qualities, but it's more post-dystopian, where they've like figured out new laws and rules and all that kind of stuff. So probably that one. I don't think any of my other ones do. think all my other ones are just.
Yeah, that's not normally what we generally do. Urban fantasy or high fantasy. But I do love good dystopian novels.
Yeah.
I read the Divergent series before I watched it. I read Hunger Games before I watched it.
Right.
Can't remember any of the others.
Yeah.
I love Divergent. I mean, I just love those books, and I don't know why. I guess because it's closer to reality than a high fantasy is. I love high fantasy too.
Right.
But I can relate better somehow because, in the fantasy world, everything's different. They have different vegetables, they have different food. And a dystopian society, generally, it's our world that is something is.
Right. Well, think about it too. If you think about Divergent, all these people get separated into categories, and that's like for some reason very enticing to people because you're like, oh, I can relate to this category, therefore I am this. And so, like you said, it's more quote unquote realistic in a fictional setting. So it's fun to be like, oh, well, I would be, Dauntless, or I would be
Hogwarts
or whatever. Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that is appealing to people too. It's like, oh, what part of this story can I relate to most, kind of thing. So I think that's another appealing characteristic.
Yeah, because I think all of you all would be the smart people in Divergent. The blue.
Probably. Courtney and I have gone off and done very stupid things before. We walked on quicksand, even though there was a sign that said warning. And we were like, no, ignore the sign. Let's just walk out there.
I'm glad to see that some of my characteristics made it into your all's lives.
Yes.
I would be dead.
There's a reason that I always test as Gryffindor.
Me too. That's true. I'm surprised you're not Ravenclaw. I think Riley is Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
Courtney was Ravenclaw. Daddy was a cross between Ravenclaw and Slytherin.
Well, that's not surprising.
No, it's not. And I was Gryffindor. I don't think I've ever tested anything but Gryffindor.
Same. Yeah. Yeah, I've always been Gryffindor. And then, but I mean, the fact that I decided to walk on quicksand kind of proves that correct. So
I think so too. Well, thank you guys for listening. Come check out our website. It is eatdrinkwrightpodcast.com. You can email us there. All our social media is there. Come follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. I think that's all of the social media we've got.
Yeah.
Let us know jokes. I need help, clearly.
Maybe you're not getting jokes because they actually like your jokes.
Oh, well, that makes me feel good. I'm sure that's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else? Thank you to Jen, our patron.
Yep.
We love her.
Yep, you're fantastic. Thank you very much.
Oh, I just posted a new newsletter for Jen, our one patron.
She gets our newsletter information.
What else? I think that's about it.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.